directional because we want make sure everybody can hear you really good. And pull that to you so you're comfortable. Okay. It's been a while since you've been here.
Mm-hmm. Has it been to this location?
No. Has it been since Babes?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Some of my staff have come, but I haven't.
Yes. Okay. I'm
Brandon.
Mm-hmm. Super nice.
Ready?
Ready.
Hey everybody, good morning and welcome to another edition of JoCo Vibes here on JoCo Community Radio. I'm Tiffany Carlen with Nona Reed. Good morning, Nona. And we've got a special guest in the studio with us, Tammy King with the Children's Advocacy Center in Cleveland. Good morning, Tammy. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
It's been your welcome. I'm glad you remembered us because it's been a while. You have not been in studio with JoCo Community Radio since it was above Babes, which was three and a half years ago.
That's correct. So
right?
My staff have joined you, but this is my first time to be at the new location. So
what do you think? We got a little more room.
I'm impressed.
Yay!
It looks really great.
That Babes? Like it wasn't that even long? 3.5 years ago?
Yes, it was longer than
Okay.
3.5 years ago.
It's like we've been here almost 3 now.
Have we really?
Yes.
Okay, so it's been, and then we were in the other location for roughly a year.
I'm not quite sure how you were there.
How long I was,
yeah.
but when Pam moved over into the second location, I can't remember how long she had been in there.
I didn't even know you were above Babes. That's the thing.
Yeah, I was.
So,
I mean, I've been up
or
above
they
Babes
were.
as a guest.
Yes.
But anyway,
Awesome.
But we miss
Little
Pam.
history there.
We miss Pam, and if you've had a chance to watch all her pictures on the backside, so you can always see her on camera.
Good morning,
so
Jamie.
she is always with us she's always with us in spirit.
Right here.
And
Here's looking.
anyway, so it's been roughly 4 to 4.5 years since you personally have been the person to join us.
To get you back on.
Yeah.
Yes.
so glad. And then guess what? But probably by the next time you come on personally, we'll be in our next location because we're getting ready to build. So it's
And you'll be real impressed with that.
yes.
What are you guys building?
So we're building a co-working facility with JoCo Community Radio attached to it, along with some other retail space on Renfro, on the east side of Renfro. So we're helping the growth towards that direction in Burleson, and it's easier. I'd say, I'd come towards Cleveland and come that way, but I live here, so it's just makes it easier to, get to work. And I'm going to be even closer to the house. So it's like, wait, do I want to move away? So for people who do not know what the Children's Advocacy Center does, please introduce it to them, because I think there's still a lot of people who don't even know that it exists.
Sure, it's a very unique beast in the world of nonprofits. So Children's Advocacy Centers were legislatively created by bringing together what's called a multidisciplinary team. You'll hear it referred to as MDT if you're talking to any of our staff or team members. But that team is made up of all of my staff, which are everyone from forensic interviewers, family advocates, intake coordinators, anyone that would provide direct service to kids caught up in abuse situations. So our staff are not investigators. We're not an investigating agency, but our multidisciplinary team partners are made up of crimes against children detectives from every single municipality across the county. We also have prosecutors from both the county attorney's and district attorney's office. Cook Children's Medical Center's CARE team. CARE is an acronym for Child Abuse Resource and Evaluation Team, and is assigned to do the forensic medical exams on kiddos, and juvenile services. And so collectively, there's about 17 of us that are agency partners. And then in addition, all of my staff work on these cases day in and day out.
Wow, there's a lot of people involved in this, and when I was doing research again on on what you all do. Your mission statement is really important. So share that with people, so they understand exactly what your overall goal is. Um,
So our mission is to provide each child who suffered abuse with justice, hope, and healing. And so that is done collectively through all the agencies I just mentioned and talked about. The Advocacy Center's focus is really to hang on to the children that are caught up in sexual abuse, severe physical abuse, child witnesses to homicides and violent crimes, which would include child pornography, child sex trafficking, are part of those cases that we see. So there's really significant trauma that these kids have suffered. So that's really where our staff comes in with doing the forensic interviews, trauma assessments, crisis intervention, and then ongoing therapy services.
What kind of numbers are you seeing right now or rather, what were the numbers looking like pre-pandemic and then during the pandemic and post-pandemic? Have you seen a significant rise?
What we've seen are unique differences. We really didn't have a lot of child sex trafficking. We had, maybe one or two a quarter, and we went from one or two a quarter to a couple a month. And so we've seen a spike in that area. A lot of technology facilitated crimes against children are taking place. Part of that is the sex trafficking. Perpetrators are accessing our kids, grooming them online, getting them to meet them. We've recovered a child from Johnson County in Houston. Thankfully, she was recovered before anything could really happen. We've recovered them all across Johnson County in hotels where there were female madams that were prostituting them out. So it's happening right here in Johnson County. So
I actually talked to a young lady who used to clean at my house, and she's a recovered addict, and she nearly got caught up in that exact type of situation, where even in that scenario, they were trying to groom her to say, no, come, you need to get away from, that dealer, we'll protect you. So come stay with us. And as soon as she went into that room and into that motel room, she saw it. And because she needed a fix. And so they were going to fix her. They were going to help her. And they said, come on, we'll help you. We'll take care of you. And that was exactly the scenario she was walking into. And it was going on in front of her with little children in the room too. And she was able to get out of that room and get away from these people. I think that was actually one of her stepping stones to heading towards sobriety. But that's terrifying. There's so many different ways that this trafficking is happening, and I'm so glad that you brought that up and are helping to address it. Do you think that there's been a significant increase in actual trafficking, or is it that we're finding them and catching them better?
I would say it's probably both. I do think there's an increase just based on what we're seeing at the center. I think during COVID, kids were isolated, spending the majority of their days on some type of device, accessing different social media platforms where they are then accessed by perpetrators. They have become very effective at hacking into gaming systems and I say hacking in, they're not technically hacking in. The kids are inviting them in and they're playing with them, and they don't know that they're being groomed at all. And after a period of time, when they get comfortable with the kids, they begin kind of pushing the limits with conversation and trying to get the kids to do things. And they start with send a photo of, I want to see who the person is I'm gaming with all the time. And then it'll just incrementally take steps where pretty soon the child can be in over their head. And that's why it's so important that parents are actively managing all those devices, and they have to throw away the attitude of this privacy thing with kids. If you're going to protect your kids in today's world and you're giving them access to devices and accesses to the online world, then you're giving perpetrators access to your children. And if you don't monitor that, then bad things could potentially happen, and that's going to be on kids.
I actually remember having a conversation with another parent when When my older children were in elementary school, and that was, well, I don't feel that it's right for me to go through my child's phone. I think they have a right to privacy, and I think my head spun around, and I was like, what? Children don't get privacy. That's exactly the problem. I personally use, and this is a good tip for any parent that's listening. I use a program called Custodio, and it's a safety software. Not only can I monitor exactly what my 11-year-old's doing online, I can block apps such as TikTok, Instagram, and they're all blocked. Snapchat blocked. But I can block cuss words. I can block what he's watching on YouTube and what he's allowed to. I can also limit how much time, screen time he has across all of the screens that we use the program for. So his laptop, his cell phone, and his gaming, the one gaming device that we do allow. So, and I mean, it doesn't matter how much you tell your children as they grow up when they're on gaming, don't talk to strangers. Don't give your real name. Don't say what baseball team you work for, you play for. Don't say what school you go to,
where you live.
And
They'll start pinning it all together.
Yeah.
Even if you accidentally just say, I live in Hawaii.
Right.
They'll start kind of pinning that and just kind of listening to some of your conversation and daily conversations you end up having with this person. They'll figure you out and they'll figure out where you are.
Well, that's their whole goal.
Yeah.
I mean,
100%.
They want to lure
Yes.
you. I've watched it happen. I've actually watched it happen with my daughter. I've watched it happen with my niece, and my teenage son. He was the worst. It didn't matter how many times you said don't use your real name on social media. He kept putting his real name on there, and and I was like, and this is before I knew about Custodio and the things we learn. Parents, listen to these ideas. That these actually work. I wish I knew them 10 years ago, and I could have. In fact, I probably would never have given the kid a phone not 10 years ago, because he didn't have it at 7. We made that rule middle school. But what other tips do you have that can help keep our kids safe before any of these types of things happening? Not just the trafficking, but the sexual abuse and the abuse when it comes to escaping, speaking up, knowing where and how they can use their voice.
Sure. There's lots of things parents can and should do with their kids. And I would say the top thing is make sure your kids are involved in healthy activities, that they have protected time offline, no devices. Kids today really struggle with face-to-face communication because they're always looking at a device, holding a device, and they can be in the same room and literally text each other while they're sitting in the same room. So we have to help this generation kind of reconnect with each other. And parents really, we bear that responsibility of teaching our kids how to engage in the real world and get off the online world for a little while every day. That needs to happen. And the other thing I would say is there needs to be honest conversation around what's happening, in our community, in our country, our world right now. There's a lot of things out there that are just hammering our kids. It is a tsunami of just all kinds of stressful situations hitting our kids. And so they're navigating things that I never had to navigate as a kid. And, I watched my daughter deal with just the onslaught of things that happen in the corridors of the high school. Peer pressure, things that she's being pushed to accept that go against her values. And so all of our kids are being hit with that.
We've got a friend here in town whose daughter was set to graduate from Centennial High School next year, and she said, I don't want to go back there. Take me to homeschool, because things were written on bathroom walls and on the hallway walls that was exactly it. It wasn't a part of her moral compass, and didn't want it shoved in her face, and just is tired of it. And so she's going to homeschool her senior year.
Well, the reality is, in the midst of COVID, there was a national emergency declared for the mental health of our kids. Suicide just spiked out of control for our young people. helpful. And it really comes back to all these issues being thrown at them and things that they're being pushed to experiment with, and then they're confused and they don't know what to do. And again, that's really where parents come in, is you need to be that voice of reason. You need to, first of all, calm your own emotions. And if you can't do that, your kids are not going to come to you and talk to you if you just are explosive. We need to learn how to control those knee-jerk emotional reactions and be calm, or just say, give me 30 minutes and then we'll sit down and talk about this. And then take 30 minutes to kind of wrap your brain around what you just heard or saw or found on a device before you sit down and talk to your kid. And make sure you have valid points to talk to them about. If you lose your temper and you're just yelling at them, all you're guaranteeing is they're not going to come back to you when they're faced with another issue. So it's concept we have to use in forensic interviewing is really controlling our emotions. Kids say some really hideous stuff in the midst of disclosing what kind of abuse they've endured. And it's very hard to hear that. And sometimes, your heart just breaks and you want to cry when you're sitting in that room. But you have to control your emotions, because a lot of times kids are testing us. They're giving us a little bit of the information, and then they're watching us to see how we respond. And if we respond without being really harsh and judgmental to them, then they're going to continue talking. If not, we're going to lose the conversation.
Well, we're going to continue talking here just after this quick commercial break. We'll be right back with Tammy King after this. We got a 2-minute break. It's a 2-minute auto commercial break.
Okay.
I'm going to.
Stretch,
Are you really
water.
loud in your headphones?
I sound loud, but
Okay, I can turn you down. Do you want water or what? Okay, good. Do you feeling better as far as, I think it feels a lot cooler than it did.
It's cool.
Oh, it gets so hot in here.
Okay, that's going really good. And I've got the August event coming up, pulled up too, so we can talk about the gala, and then also where all your general funding comes from, so people understand why you guys have to do the fundraising. I think that's really important. Gosh, I thought about this, we really should have had you on during the pandemic, because we were talking about all of this, just like crazy. The suicide rate that had gone up, the drug use, the drug abuse. It's just been out of control.
yeah, for our kids, about 1/3 of our kids have some type of suicidality when they come in the first time. And in the midst of COVID, we hit 47.88%. It's
Oh my
almost half of the kids.
Yeah,
So it's really scary.
I definitely want you to I want you to tell those numbers. I don't think a lot of parents want to admit what might be going on in their home or with their child, and that can be terrifying. And I was not in denial, just didn't know how bad what was going on. My daughter nearly died last year from an overdose of fentanyl. So, one pill.
And that's another epidemic we're battling. We had several kids involved in it.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Welcome back to the second half of JoCo Vibes here on JoCo Community Radio. We are proud to be the voice of Johnson County, Texas, and are live 365 on the TuneIn Radio Network. To listen or watch, simply go to tuneinjoco.com to choose where and how. The JoCo Community Radio app is now available for free on Android and Apple devices. Simply search your store. Check out our lineup and more on JoCoCommunityRadio.com. This episode and more brought to you by Patriot Claims, making your insurance work for you. use, reach out to your local Texas sales rep, Nona Reed, at 844-TEX-HAIL. That's 844-839-4245. Get her in your corner before the next storm hits, because hail happens, storms happen, and insurance companies don't like to pay the full amount of your claim. No. It's just, so you gotta have somebody who's gonna advocate for you. So welcome back. Tammy King is with us here still from the Children's Advocacy Center in Cleburne, serving all of Johnson County.
Correct.
And there are children's advocacy centers all over the country, right? Not just the state of Texas. And thank God for services like yours. And you are a 501c3. And fundraising is definitely a part of your needs. Obviously, you do get some funding from the state, I would assume, from the government. But these events that you guys host, first of all, are really wonderful, super fun. And the next one that's coming up is the Cowboys for Kids Gala. Tell everybody about the Cowboys for Kids Gala.
Sure. Cowboys for Kids is our largest fundraising event for the Children's Advocacy Center, and it's been going for over 25 years. And it's fabulous. It is made up of a huge silent auction with very high-end items, and then a live auction. We have dinner that's Meatmeisters. It's barbecue cook-off team that cooks for us. And then we have a Vegas style show. This year, Becker Magic will be flying in to do the show for Cowboys for Kids.
Pretty cool.
And then we have a huge live auction that follows the show every year. So it's great fun and helps raise a lot of money for us too.
And this year it's Saturday, August 27th.
Yes.
At the Cleburne Conference Center, 5 p.m. Doors open, 6 p.m. Dinner begins. If you're interested in becoming a sponsor, there's still some sponsorships available.
Yes, there's all kinds of table sponsorships at different levels, as well as other sponsors that can come forward for whether it's auction, dinner, whatever it might be that you're interested in helping with. There are still some of those available. Just contact the Advocacy Center if you have an interest.
So you can go to cacjctx.org to learn more about the Children's Advocacy Center and all that they do. Click on the events page and go to the Cowboys for Kids Gala, and there's a download form for becoming a sponsor. And tickets, are they for sale yet? Or I don't see a link for tickets yet.
Our packets are not out yet.
Okay.
They'll be hitting mailboxes probably in the next 3 weeks. But I do want to mention probably the biggest change this year's event, or the biggest addition, is that we're actually doing a Ford XLT, I can't even remember the name of it, a truck raffle. So it's the Super Crew 2-wheel drive Ford pickup. So tickets are $100 each. We're only selling 1,500 tickets, and the drawing will take place at Cowboys for Kids. So we need to sell those tickets to help cover the cost of the vehicle that we are purchasing. And then anything outside of that will go towards helping to provide services for our kids.
Absolutely fantastic. So once you guys are ready to release, to get the mailers out, that information will be available online too, or can you buy those tickets now?
Right, the truck raffle is available now. So if you go onto the website, there should be a landing page for just the truck raffle. It will take you through and give you directions on what to do once you click online, because we're using a platform called GalaBid. So GalaBid works with nonprofits, but there's part of the checkout we're trying to make sure everybody knows about, where they automatically calculate in a tip, and you can change that tip. You can zero it, or you can make it $1 or $2, but that tip goes to GalaBid. That does not come to the Children's Advocacy Center. So make sure when you check out, you click the down arrow, hit other, and then hit other again, and you put in whatever amount you want.
Excellent. So how are you guys looking for the year so far in your fundraising?
We're seeing things really ticking up. So we're excited about the fact that we've been in person again, because we had to do Cowboys for Kids virtual in 2019. So or 2020, I guess. And then last year we came back in person, and there was a lot of excitement. We saw a lot of excitement in the room. And I think this year will be even bigger. I feel like we'll be back more to our more normal situation. It's been a ride for the last couple of years for sure, because we haven't been able to raise the funds that we need to. We're also in the middle of a capital campaign, so we just got moved into our new building. So it was really interesting to be in that, I don't even know what you call it, the ship that was getting tossed in a storm during that time, trying to raise money to keep the center operating and to also get our building completed.
Was your, and I mean, speaking of that too, during the pandemic, were you able to keep your doors open as a necessity to the community and to help,
Yes.
to be there to help children?
Yes, children's advocacy centers were considered essential, and so we absolutely kept our doors open for kids. We never shut down.
Just to give a few numbers for people who don't know, 1 in 4 girls is sexually abused before her 18th birthday. That's 25%. 1 in 6 boys is sexually abused before his 18th birthday. That's 17%. 98% of children know their perpetrators. So listen to your children when they tell you that someone has done something to them. Even if it's someone you love, that's you cannot ignore what you're being told by your children. 98% of children know their perpetrators. 25% of children were not old enough to attend kindergarten when it happened to them. So be aware. Parental tip: don't let your children sleep over friends' houses where you don't know the parents. I think that's super, super important. Know where your children are going and who they're going to be spending time with.
Have a plan in place. Make sure that you have a plan. If you are sending your child somewhere and something happens, whether it's at a birthday party, a sleepover, whatever it might be, make sure that you as a family have a plan in place if something goes wrong for your child.
So, such as a safe word? I mean, what are some of those tips that you give to families?
A child could text a simple word to mom or dad that means "come get me now."
Okay.
You know, so there just needs to be something. Our kids are just the peer pressure part of it really plays a huge role in a lot of the abuse cases that we see. And I think if there's just a way for them to have an easy out, mom and dad can show up and say, "Hey, we've had a family emergency. You need to come with us now."
Do you find that our children are more, and I you can give me a better word than this, if it's not the right word, do you find that they're more gullible because of the state of technology in their hands?
I think the challenge is if children have been communicating online with someone that they think is another kid their age or someone that they're kind of develop a crush on, online crush, and they've been communicating for a little bit, then all of a sudden they're not a stranger to them anymore. And so they let down their guard. And it's like, well, no, I know them. Well, no, you really only know what they presented to you online. You don't really know who this person is. And this is what we try to emphasize when we're out talking to kids is that, they can post somebody else's picture. They can create a profile that's based on your profile. All the things that you say that you like, or if you're posting a profile, that is perpetrators. I mean, they love that. It's like gold mine.
Yeah.
Right. So really have to be intentional about those conversations with kids, and you say don't talk to strangers, but again, it goes back to that 98%. When kids don't feel like they're a stranger anymore because they've built a relationship with this person, and so and especially perpetrators are really good with grooming techniques where they attack vulnerabilities of children.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just say you have a 12 or 13-year-old little girl whose self-esteem is really low. Maybe she's overweight, she struggles with her appearance, and then you have someone telling her she's beautiful all the time. And of course she wants to believe that. Of course it makes her feel good. And all of a sudden the child's left with, I am beautiful, I am wonderful, or it's all a lie and my life is, I'm not worthy in some way, I'm less than. So we need to make sure our kids know they're not less than.
I've read some grooming through Instagram messages with one of my children that were from the past. But when you go through and you read them, the grooming was insane. It was absolutely insane. The things that were being said to my child, and they will use your parents against you too, by the way. They will use you if they see one little post where you start talking and complaining about mom and dad don't let me do this, or they're not letting me do that. They will take that and use that with your child. So there's nothing wrong with reading your children's text messages, their private messages. There is nothing private for children. So dive in and be a part of their secret world, because there is this whole secret world happening with our children. And it's so funny. I haven't played Words with Friends in a really long time on my phone. I was like, oh, I think I'll get back in. I like to play Wordle, which is the New York Times Wordle. I was like, I think I'll dive back in. I still had the app open. And so when I opened it, and I hadn't played in a couple of years, and I would always play usually with, my sister, brother-in-law, they would all play. And I was like, wow, this app looks really different now when you get in and play. And so I kept getting invited to play by strangers who were all men. And so I'm just playing, and I'm putting my words in, and then I see that there's a message pop up. And one of them was very, very aggressive in asking me questions. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm just here to play Scrabble. I'm just here to play Scrabble. Well, where do you live? How old are you? Do you still? I said, and by the way, I'm married, as you can see, and my name literally says someone's wife. And so it was so interesting to see those questions happening to me as an adult. Well, I just want to get to know you. I'm in the military, and I'm stationed out in the Sahara or whatever, and I'm a commander, and blah blah blah, and I'm just just want to get to know you. And I was like, okay, it's time to block this person. Why? So, but this is where they think they can actually infiltrate anyone, and so grooming, it happens all the time. Okay, so
Unfortunately, the children think, oh, you're mean or ugly. You gotta get that in their head. This person's they're not being, they may seem like they're being sweet and caring, but they're not. Their intentions are not that way.
they don't know you.
Right.
They don't know you.
So it's okay to hurt their feelings. Block them. Move on.
What other types of statistics would you like to share, not just with the parents, but with our communities, and how also can we get our community more involved with the Advocacy Center? How can we help serve you other than the donating side of it?
There's a huge volunteer program at the Children's Advocacy Center. So for someone who has time on their hand, whether it's technology, maintenance, social media, actually physically sitting and doing crafts and activities with children, reading books. Our summer safety camp is coming up for our kiddos. It's going to be next week. We need a host of volunteers to really help us. We have to have a criminal background check, child abuse background check, and a national sex offender background check done on every employee, every volunteer. Obviously, every employee has it as well, and before they can volunteer. And so there's lots of ways to help with that. There's also helping with our fundraising events. There's organizing snack drives. We go through a ton of snacks with our kids. Every kid essentially that gets our doors is going for the snack basket when they arrive. So, and those are just a few. And this is, as far as the stats, the one thing I do want to mention is we were talking during commercial time about the suicide rate that we've seen at the Advocacy Center. About 1/3 of our children that come through the Advocacy Center are experiencing some type of suicidality. In the midst of COVID, that hit 47.88%. Now, I don't believe that was just for our kids that we're seeing that, because I think that's a nationwide problem that we're going to have to contend with. And there's all kinds of issues, again, hitting our kids. But for kids that have experienced severe trauma, the likelihood of them really harming themselves is significant. And so it's really important that we have the services in place to provide the trauma assessments, the crisis intervention, and to seek out hospitalization when it's needed for our kids. It's really critical. We have a huge clinical team, which is over 1/3 of our staff at the Advocacy Center. But that's something I want parents, caregivers, anyone that has children in their life to recognize and understand But our kids are under so much stress right now. They don't have to have gone through abuse to be facing the stress of the world's heaping on their shoulders. They need to know that there's someone there to listen. And again, if you can sit and just get yourself to a place where you can keep from emotionally overreacting to what they're telling you, then they're going to be much more likely to sit down and talk to you. But you need to have honest conversations. You need to communicate how much you care, how much you love them, because if you don't, there's going to be somebody in that online world that will, that you don't want to.
You know, 47%, that number is based on reported. So we have to know that that number is likely much higher.
Those are just our kids. That's not
Right,
nationwide.
right.
Nationwide, it was declared a national emergency.
And we're still in it, don't you believe? I mean, we are still in this crisis.
Absolutely.
I mean, I've seen it with multiple children. Just looking at our high schoolers who, even when they went back to school after the pandemic, when it opened back up, they weren't going in the schools. They were hanging out in the parking lot, or they weren't going at all. They weren't showing up. And you know, do we compare? Do we look back and look at what happened during 9/11? And I wonder where we compare, you know, with that crisis and fear, and not just the pandemic, but now school shootings and more shootings, and you know, what's going through our kids' minds, and you know, how even at the school level, do the schools implement these conversations with our children to say, hey,
I want to say something about that.
it's hard, right?
We have great legislators that represent Johnson County, and they really fight to do things that are good for our kids. But we had a Senate Bill 9 just came through that made it much more difficult for us to be in schools without, we have to have opt-in from parents on a lot of stuff, which is fine. I mean, I don't want someone teaching my child certain things that I feel like it's my moral obligation to teach my child. I'm a huge supporter of that. But sometimes some of it's so far-reaching, you can't talk to kids about what they really need to be talked to. And listen, educators make up over 50% of the reporters in child abuse cases. They are so important, and the work they do is hard. But they know these children. They develop relationships with them. And that is a place where a lot of really good things can happen for kids. They can find their safe person or safe people. And so that's a really important relationship for the Children's Advocacy Centers with educators and all the different school districts, because we know their plates are full. It's even over. But with all the latest that's happened down in Uvalde, I know it's for kids. Every time I walk through the doors, there's probably a question of, you know,
Who's
what's it
gonna
gonna
lose?
be like? Or,
Yeah.
you know.
Is somebody going to lose their? Is this going to happen here? And you know, we have to look at those safety issues. And doors do get left open, and even the doors are locked. You know, a kid can just go open. Somebody wave at the door like they're late to school, and boom, open a door for them, and they're in. And they may not belong there, or they do belong there, and they're not there for the right reason. So. And I agree with you. Legislation is legislation, and we do have great legislators in the state. But where do we draw the line on what we can and cannot discuss with a child at school? And why aren't we separating that? There's a difference between mental health and sexual health. And so if you're focusing on, but that can be a dual. That could be a dual issue.
Right. You know, the really exciting thing about the Children's Advocacy Centers in Texas is right now we've embarked on a campaign to end child sexual abuse. Everyone should have that mindset. If you're in the world of having to work with kids that have been traumatized, right? We don't want it to ever happen to our kids. We want to be on the side that's stopping it. Mm-hmm. So we have lots of prevention programs that we do, but too many times kids hit our doors and it's already happened. And so all of our services are taking somewhat of a shift where we're doing the anti-victimization programs when we're in school, but we're also now doing anti-perpetration, where we're really kind of talking to kids about behaviors, things that are appropriate, things that are not, and that are really important in stopping kids from ever becoming perpetrators. And we have a new label in our role called PSB, or problematic sexualized behavior. And so all of our therapists are being trained in this because we have a lot of young kids that when inappropriate things have happened or they've witnessed it, then they begin acting out on other kids.
Mhm.
This doesn't mean these kids have to grow up to be offenders. It means we need to teach them appropriate ways to respond and make sure they understand that's not appropriate and this is.
Coping mechanisms, how to break the cycle. I mean, I talk very openly. I've talked openly about it before. My mom was a victim of childhood sexual abuse, and so was her sister, and they were very, very young. And if it's not treated, and if it's ignored, and of course that was a very different time as well, and that will stick with you for it stuck with her whole life. Her sister and her handled it both very differently. And it's so interesting. I mean, to at least to know, right? To know that about your parent, but to be able to share that so people can understand why it's so important to allow your child to talk about it. That it's not a hush hush secret. It's not shameful to have gone through sexual abuse. You have to allow them to communicate about it and to get help. It's super important. Or it will stick with them because it's the difference between a victim mentality and a survivor mentality. And where do those conversations happen if the parent themselves is not equipped to have that conversation? You have to allow someone in your children's lives to be that person, and you can't necessarily put that responsibility solely on the school, can't necessarily put this solely on a church. Their perpetrator may have been from the church. The perpetrator may have been from the school, and the perpetrator may have been from their own home. And so we have to look at everything, right? And I think sometimes parents get afraid to open their eyes wide open because it's terrifying and self-blame. I mean, where do you go with that when the children come in? Do you work with other agencies to help the parents?
We actually help the parents and all the siblings as well. Non-offending caregiver, I should say. So let's just say stepdad's the perpetrator. Obviously, he's not going to come into the center, but the primary victim that suffered at the hands of the stepfather would receive services, but so would all the other children, and mom would also qualify for services. So it's really about helping the whole family become healthy. But we know if we don't help mom, and she's going to go back into, she may pick the same type of relationship over and over again without realizing that's what she's doing. Maybe mom was a victim in childhood, and now we're seeing the cycle repeat itself. And so we have parent support groups. We have our small, what we call our PD group of small kids, and we have our tweens, and we have our teens, and then we have all the individual counseling, and then all of our therapy is evidence-based therapy. So primarily we use trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, but we also use child and family traumatic stress approach for maybe the kids that were witnesses or they're dealing with that guilt wrapped around, well, it happened to my sister, I didn't even know it was going on. And so those kids can go through a shorter term treatment. And whereas the child that is a primary victim, it's going to average probably 6 to 8 months and going through a trauma narrative and all those through TFCBT or trauma focused cognitive behavior.
Age limit for children that can come to the Children's Advocacy Center?
It's all the way up to 18, but I will tell you, if we have a child in high school that has been victimized and then they're leaving to go to college and maybe they're experiencing anxiety about what's going to happen when I get there, what's it going to look like, what it's going to feel like, they can enter back into services in any of the advocacy centers.
Okay.
Same thing, it takes 18 to 24 months for a case to reach final disposition or to go to trial. Most of our cases plea out, but the ones that don't, by the time the kids go to trial, they've already graduated from therapy services at the center. So life has kind of moved on, and then all of a sudden here comes all of this, and they have to face their perpetrator in a courtroom, and so a lot of things get brought up again. And so at that point in time, they can come back into services, and we provide what's called court school to help them get ready. And we do court accompaniment. Our amazing therapy dogs and canine advocates can go with the children to court. So the dogs are huge for us too.
Well, fantastic. I love that you guys do that. We've got a minute left. Be sure that if you're interested in attending the event in August, or if you just want to donate and help, or if you want to buy a raffle ticket for $100 for the Ford truck, Go to cacjctx.org. You can also get to all of the event links, the volunteer links. Be prepared if you want to volunteer to go through some background checks. And before we go, we want to give you your focus word of the week is prayer. This is the confidence we have in approaching God, that if we ask anything according to His will, He hears us. And the focus tip, where's my tip? This week, surround yourself with the word prayer. Put it on a sticky note at work, write it on your bathroom mirror, set a reminder on your phone, jot it down in your weekly planner. Just do it while you're driving in the car, wherever, and pray for our children, guys. Thank you, Tammy, so much for all that you do. We'll see you guys back here tomorrow morning. Have an amazing day. God bless. Great job.
So what's that?
You talk so well. I mean, you talk so well about it. It's just so flows just so freely. Thank you.
So what about the Senate Bill 9?
Senate Bill 9 was put in, I mean, again, I don't want someone teaching my child about sexuality or